Masechet Shevuot, Daf Yod Dalid. On the previous daf, we saw a Baraita that was wondering, how do Kohanim achieve atonement? We know that the Kohen Gadol brings a pod. That's for himself and his family. And we know that there is also a Sa'ir Lechatat, that's brought La'am, for the people. But the Kohanim don't fit well into either category. They're not part of the Aharon and his family. They're also not part of the rest of the people. They're kind of in between. So which way does it go? And the Braita concluded that it makes more sense that the Kohanim will be included with Aharon and his family, and the word Beto also can actually mean Bet Aharon, means all of Aharon's family, not only Aharon's family, but all the Kohanim are called Bet Aharon. Now we ask a question about that Braita, because the Braita was assuming Asher La'am Lahachihu Da'ata, this phrase Asher La'am, that's here in this pasuk regarding V'shachat et Se'ir Chatat Asher La'am, the Sa'ir, one of the pairs, the other one goes to Azazel. This one is brought Ve'hevi et Amo mibet aparochet v'asatamo k'shasad et amapar v'izarato al kaporet v'nei kaporet, and we sprinkle his blood. But this Se'ir Chatat is for the people, and the Baraita assumed that this phrase Asher La'am teaches us that it gives atonement to the people. However, is that true that the words Asher La'am teach that the Sa'ir gives atonement for the general people? Hi, mi ba'ele de ka'amar achamana mi de'am leheve. We need this phrase to teach something else, to teach that this Sa'id is paid for by the funds of the people, by the collective communal funds that everybody gives when they give machasita shekel. So says Asher La'am. You can't have one person say, I want to sponsor the Sa'id on Yom Kippur in the name of Mr. and Mrs. Friedman donated this thing. Or it'd be a great honor. Everybody would want to do that. And you can't do that. It has to be bought by the communal funds, because it says Asher La'am, so it's bought by the people. So since we needed to teach that, who buys it, we cannot use it to teach who it achieves atonement for. So the answer is, Hahu me ve'ume'et adat b'nei Yisrael nafka. Oh, we can actually derive that everybody has to buy they use communal funds to buy the Sa'ir from a different phrase. When it says from Adat B'nai Israel, they will take 2 goats. So from there you learn that you use communal funds to pay for the 2 goats, and therefore Asher La'am can in fact teach what this Baraita uses it to teach, which is that the Sa'ir achieves atonement for all of Bnei Israel, not the Kohen Gadol, but for the rest of Bnei Israel, for that subcategory of when there was no Yedi'ah, and then there was Yedi'ah, this will atone for that. V'hai asher lo lahachihu da'ata, hai mi ba'ele l'chedetanya, mishelo hu mebi ve'no mebi mishel sibur. Now back to that same Baraita, it was assuming that the phrase asher lo, that the Kohen Gadol will bring the Par HaChatat that is his, teaches us that this Par HaChatat atones for his own sins and that of his family, but therefore not necessarily anybody else. But is Asher Lo really coming to teach us that the Par atones for Aharon and his family, or the Kohen Gadol and his family? We need the word Asher Lo to teach something else, according to the Braita, that the Kohen Gadol has to pay for this cow from his own funds and cannot bring it from communal funds. So since we need these words already for something else, we cannot use it for what the Braita says. Challenge to the Braita. Now the Braita actually continues. Yachol lo yavi mishel sibur shene sibur mitkaperim bo, aval yabi mishel echav hakohanim shechav hakohanim mitkaperim bo. Now you might think that it should not come from communal funds, because the communal funds do not. It doesn't atone for the community, meaning for Yisrael. That's why we don't take from machasita shekel to pay for this pod, because the people are not getting any benefit from it. Not directly. I'm sure they're happy that the Kohen Gadol is getting atonement, but they're not getting direct benefit from it, and that's why we don't use the communal funds. But what about the other Kohanim? Since the other Kohanim, the conclusion of the Baraita we saw yesterday was in fact that the other Kohanim achieve atonement for themselves from the pod that the Kohen Gadol brings. So you might think, therefore, that the other Kohanim should chip in and pay for the pod. Talmud Omar, Asher lo, that's why the Pasuk says, no, only the Kohen does. He pays for it himself, even though it will actually benefit all the other Kohanim also. Now you might think that's lechatechila, the Kohen Gadol should pay for it. But b'diavad, let's say all the other Kohanim chipped in, then it would be okay. B'diavad, should we think that? The chapter in Acharemot says Asher lo twice, and the second one says even b'diavad. If someone else paid for it, even another Kohen, it's no good. The Aharon or the whoever is the Kohen Gadol has to pay for it himself from his own funds. So we see that both instances of Asher Law are necessary to teach us this, because I might have thought that maybe some of the Kohanim, they're getting atonement, maybe they can chip in. Maybe b'diavad, if they do, it's okay. No, Asher Law teaches otherwise, and therefore, since we need Asher Law to teach us who pays for it, we cannot use it as the Baraita yesterday did to teach us that the Kohen Gadol and his family get atonement through this. So how can we explain this Baraita? The answer is Tanahachi kakashyale ma'ishna be'da'am de la mechaper de la kachasri be'mamona tichtib asher la'am be'daharon name la kachasri be'mamona ve'kamar kulan keduyin beto. This is how to properly understand the question of the Baraita. It was wondering, in what way is the sa'ir that's given for the nation different, and why does it not atone for any Kohanim? Because the Kohanim are not forfeiting any money to pay for it. It's the general communal funds. Everybody gives machasita shekel, that pays for it, and everybody gets atonement. Kohanim are not paying into the fund, and therefore they are not going to achieve atonement because they didn't pay for it. And how do we know that? The people pay for it and not any individual and not Kohanim and not anybody else, because it says Asher La'am. So now that we know that there is a one-to-one relationship, whoever pays for an animal, the chatat, is the one that gets atonement for it. Well then, regarding Aharon, also, Aharon is paying for it, or the Kohen Gadol, whoever it is paying for it, and the rest of the Kohanim are not forfeiting any money. They're not chipping in to buy for it, to buy it, and therefore, I would assume that the Kohanim also do not get atonement. If you don't chip in, then you don't get atonement. That's what I would have thought. That's what we were learning from the phrase Asher Lo. It's not that Asher Lo directly means that only Aharon gets atonement for it. No, in fact, as you said, the word Asher Lo means Aharon has to pay for it. But the point is that we see a general principle. Whoever pays for it gets atonement for it. And since it says Asher Lo, and only Aharon pays for it, therefore only he would get atonement for it. Therefore, we had a question. It says Asher La'am. It says Asher Lo. The Kohanim aren't paying for anything. They're not chipping in for any Korban Chatat. So how are they going to get atonement? And that's why it concluded, Ve'kamar kulan keruyin beto. All the Kohanim are called the household of Aharon, as it says, Bet Aharon, Baruch Hu Hashem. And so that includes all the Kohanim, and in fact, they get atonement through the par of the Kohen Gadol. Bishlama Rabbi Shimon, Hainu Dichtib, Tere Viduyin Vedam Apar, Chad Keneged Sa'ir Nasa Bifnim, Vechad Keneged Sa'ir Nasa Bachutz, Vechad Keneged Sa'ir Hamishta Leach. We understand well, according to Rabbi Shimon, why the Pesukim twice talk about vidui and the sprinkling of the blood of the pad. It says twice in that parasha in Acharemot, v'hikrib, he'll bring it. It doesn't say literally vidui, but it does say, we could look at the Pesukim right here, v'hikrib Aharon et pad hachatat asher lo v'chiper ba'ado ba'ad beto. So he's going to bring close his pad hachatat, that is his, that's Aharon's pad, the Kohen Gadol's pad, and which will achieve atonement for himself and for his family. achieve atonement. So the rabbi's understanding that this means to say vidui. And then a few pisukim later, it says again, Vikli baharonet parachatata shelo v'chiper ba'ado ba'ad beto. Same exact phrase as before. So we understand this as another vidui. And then it says, V'shachata parachatata shelo. Then he does shechita, and then it continues and talks about taking the blood, v'lachach midama par v'zah be'espa'o, al pnei kaporet kedman, he sprinkles the blood. It only says sprinkling the blood once, but regarding v'chiper, which means vidui, it says that twice. So why do we have two viduis and one dam? Well, it all makes sense according to the Bishimon, because chad keneged seira nasa bifnim, chad keneged seira nasa bachutz, chad keneged seira mishtaleach. When it comes to Yisrael, there are also three things, and each one serves a different purpose. The sa'ir that's done on the inside, that atones for when there was yedi'ah at the beginning, but then he forgot and he didn't remember afterwards. And the sa'ir that's done on the outside, that's together with the musaf offerings, that is for the opposite case when he didn't know he was tameh before, entered into the mikdash, and then did realize after. And then you have and then you have the Seder Mishtaleach that will atone for all other sins besides Tumat Mikdash ve'Kadashav. So just like for Israel, you have these three different korbanot for three different categories of sin. So too, according to the Bishimon, the Kohanim never get any benefit from the Sa'ir. They get no atonement from any of these Se'irim. All the Se'irim are for Yisrael, and therefore the Kohanim, the Kohen Gadol and his family, and the Kohanim have to get atonement only from the Pad. Now, the Pad is only one animal, so how can you have one animal that will achieve three things? And the answer is because you do three things with that animal. Because you have two viduis and one sprinkling of the blood of the Pad. So each one of those three will achieve a different thing. One of them will achieve Yedi'ah and He'elem, one of them He'elem and Yedi'ah, and one of them, the blood, will achieve the atonement for all of the other sins besides Tumat Mikdash ve'Kadashav. So you see, according to the Bishimon, everything lines up nicely. But according to the Biyudah, remember, the Biyudah says that the Sa'ir HaMishtaleach atones for general sins, both for Yisrael and for Kohanim. Therefore, the Kohanim do not need three things because they're covered for their general sins by the Seder Mishtaleach. They still need the Pad to cover two things, the one parallel to the inside and the outside Seirim, meaning Yedi'ah and He'elem and Yedi'ah. So yes, they need two things, but not three. So we ask, according to the Biyudah, why do you need two viduis and one dam? Bechad vidui v'damosagya. It would be enough to say vidui once and bring the blood, and that will atone for Yedi'ah and He'elem and Yedi'ah. And then the Seder Mishtaleach will cover the Kohanim for general sins. The answer is echad lo v'echad lebeto. We need one vidui for the Kohen Gadol himself, his own person, and then the other one is for all the other kohanim. Kedetana deber b'Ishmael, kachi midat hadin noheget, mutav yabo zakai v'chaper al hachayav, v'al yabo chayav v'chaper al hachayav. As a baraita of Rabbi Ishmael teaches that this is the way of justice, that it's better if a meritorious, an innocent person comes and asks for atonement for someone who is liable, and not that someone guilty should come and atone for someone who is guilty. In other words, if you're going to hire a lawyer, you want to hire a lawyer who has a spectacular reputation as being innocent, above board, right? And that way, this person who is respected, who will plead on your behalf, or it could be a lawyer or someone representing you want someone who has a very good reputation, totally clean record, who will come and represent and speak for you and help you achieve atonement. What you don't want to do is hire a criminal. I'm a criminal. I'm going to hire another criminal to represent me, so that's going to make me look bad. And therefore, here also, everybody makes some sins. Who knows? Maybe they didn't. Maybe even by mistake, someone was tameh. They didn't realize one time, including the Kohen Gadol. Therefore, the Kohen Gadol should achieve atonement for himself first. So he says vidui. on his pod, and he atones for his sins, right? Even if it was unwitting that sometime he came into the Mikdash, whatever happened. Once he is innocent, then the Kohen Gadol will be worthy to come and atone for everybody else, and then they'll say vidui for all the other Kohanim on the pod, and then they'll say vidui for all of Bnei Israel on the Sa'ir. And this is what a wonderful lesson, that before we rebuke others, we should make sure that we are innocent first. Hadran alach Shevuot shetayim. We now begin the second perek of Masechet Shevuot, and here we bring all of the Mishnayot of the perek and then all of the Gemara. Just like in the first perek, we had there also the entire Mishnah, not split up between different sections and then the Sugyot, but rather the whole Mishnah and then the whole Gemara. And the opening Mishnah is actually going to expand on the first Mishnah from Perek Aleph. Yediot hatumah shetayim shehen arba. Nitma v'yada v'ne'alema mimenu hatumah v'zachur et hakodesh. So, Yediot hatumah, cases of awareness and forgetfulness regarding Tumat Mikdash v'Kadashav. There are two basic laws that expand into four, and for all of these cases, one will have to bring a korban ole v'yored. So here's one of the cases. If someone became tameh, and he knew he was tameh, and then he forgot afterwards, and he knew that the meat that was in front of him was sacrificial food. So he knew it was sacrificial food, and he knew he was tameh, but he forgot then that he was tameh, and then he ate it. That's one case. And the second case is he forgot that this meat was sacrificial food, although he knew he was tameh. I know I'm tameh, but I thought that this meat was regular chulin meat, which is permitted to eat when tameh. That's the second case. Now, it could be either forgetfulness by itself or together. Maybe he forgot that he first he knew he was tameh, and he knew that this was sacrificial meat. But then he forgot he was tameh, and he also forgot that this meat was sacrificial meat. That would be just a subcase of these two together. It's not a third case. And he ate that sacrificial meat without knowing that it was a problem, and afterwards he realized and remembered, then he has to bring a korban ole v'yored, because that's the case of ole v'yored, when you knew, then forgot, and then remembered again. All that are two cases that have to do with sacrificial meat. Now we're going to multiply that for cases of going into the Mikdash. He became tameh, and he knew he was tameh, and then he forgot that he was tameh, although he knew the whole time that this area where he's walking is the area that is Mikdash courtyard. Or or he forgot that this area was part of the Bet HaMikdash courtyard, and that's prohibited to go there when tameh, although he knew he was tameh. I know I'm tameh, but I didn't realize that I'm walking in a place where I'm not allowed to be. That's cases 3 and 4. Now you could combine 3 and 4. Could be that he forgot he was tameh, and he also forgot that this area was holy. V'nichnas mikdash v'lo yada. Mishe yasa yada hareze be'ole v'yored. And he entered into the mikdash while he during a period of forgetfulness, and afterwards he remembered again. In this case also, he has to bring ole v'yored. So that's all 4 cases. And one has to bring a korban ole v'yored for going into the area of the courtyard of the temple while tameh. That includes the original area of the courtyard and also the addition to the temple courtyard. It was expanded at a certain time during Herod. Herod, in fact, expanded it a lot. He built the Kotel wall, in fact, that we go to and pray, is actually a foundation wall, because he made that wall and then filled it in with dirt to raise up the platform that's inside so that he can extend the courtyard. And so, yes, you can extend the courtyard, but it has to be through the following procedure. As long as you follow the following elaborate procedure, then the additional part of the courtyard becomes holy also and prohibited to go there while tameh, and you'd have to bring a korban olev yored if you knew and then didn't know and then knew again. Now, what is that ritual? Shen mosifin ala iyad v'ala azarot ela b'melech v'navi v'urim v'tumim v'sanhedrin shel shiv'im v'echad u'b'shnei todot u'b'shir. In order to add to it, add a section to the temple courtyard, we need a king, a navi, we have to bring the urim v'tumim, we need the Sanhedrin of 71 judges. They all come out to that area and form a procession, and they walk there in that spot, and they also have 2 Thanksgiving offerings. Thanksgiving offerings are an animal and 40 loaves of bread. The Gemara will explain that you bring a loaf of bread from this animal, one of the 40 from this animal, and one of the 40 from the other animal. And they sing a special song, some a mizmor of Tehillim. We'll discuss that also. And the order is that the members of the Bet Din walk, and then the 2 Thanksgiving offerings walk after them, walk behind them. And then the whole Jewish people, not literally everybody, but representatives of Yisrael, whoever is there, will walk behind them, and then you have this big procession. It's a big deal because you're making, this space holy to the level of being the temple courtyard. Now, of those 2 loaves representing the 2 Thanksgiving offerings, one is on the inside, one is on the outside. The Gemara will explain exactly what that means, but somehow there's something like one's on the inside of the border and one's on the outside of the border, or however we end up explaining this. The inside one is eaten and the outside one is burned, showing that this one, here's where it stops, and so this one is eaten, this one is holy, and this one is outside and is not. So it seems that this is some kind of indicating precisely where the border is. Now, if any of these parts of the ritual ceremony is not done, then that area is not officially consecrated as being holy, and therefore if someone went there while tameh, they would not be liable. They wouldn't be liable to karet if they did on purpose. They wouldn't be liable to bring a korban olev yored if they knew and didn't know and did know, because it was not officially consecrated. But if you did this whole procedure properly and it was officially consecrated, then someone tameh who went there would be liable. The Mishnah continues to bring another case where one would be liable to a korban ole v'yored. This has to do with when someone enters into the mikdash courtyard while tahor, but then becomes tameh while there, and then the law is that he has to leave as soon as possible. He cannot delay. He has to go to the nearest exit, got the shortest way out. If he realizes that he's tameh and knows where he is and delays enough time to bow down, or he takes a longer route to the exit, okay, he wants to get to the other side, and so he takes a longer way. If he does it on purpose, that would be chayav karet, same as if he knew he was tameh and entered in the first place. But what if he did not realize? So then he has to bring a korban olev yored in the following cases. Remember, this case is different because usually you bring a korban olev yored when you knew you were tameh, then forgot, entered the mikdash, and then remembered afterwards. But here, there's no way to know beforehand because he was tahor beforehand. So that part of it is not relevant. So here we go. Nitma ba'azara became tameh while standing in the bet mikdash. He entered tahor and became tameh there. V'ne'alma mimenu tumah but he did not know that he became tameh, although he did know that he was in the mikdash. Or he forgot that he's in the mikdash, although he knew he became tameh. But at the moment he became tameh, he just thought he was walking in the street and did not realize he was in the temple courtyard. Or he didn't realize either of those 2 things. And he bowed down, or he stayed there the amount of time it would take to bow down. That's just simply the minimum amount of time for which one would be liable if you did it on purpose, you'd be liable karet, or ba lo ba'aruka chayav biksara patur, or if he left the long way out, then he is liable to bring a korban olev yored. If he went the short way out, then he is exempt from everything. Because even if you did it on purpose, and you don't, even if you know that you're tameh, and you leave right away, you're okay. Or what else can you do? I mean, you happen to be there while you're tameh, which is not good, but as long as you leave right away, you did what you needed to. So since, if you know you're tameh and you're doing it on purpose, if you leave right away, you're okay, but if you stick around or take the longer way out, you would be chayav. So too, you chayav karet if you did it on purpose. So too, when you don't realize, so that means that there was no yedi'ah in the beginning because you were tahor in the beginning, so that's not relevant at all. Right now, you don't know that you're in the mikdash, or you don't know that you're tameh, and you did something that, had you known, would make you liable to karet, but although you did it by mistake, and then you realize afterwards, one brings a korban olev yored. Zohi mitzvat aseh shebamikdash en chayvin aleha, and this is an example of the mitzvah aseh in the mikdash, for which if the Sanhedrin makes a mistake, they are not liable. This is referencing back to a Mishnah in Masechet Horayot, or forwards. Horayot is coming after this, but Horayot, apparently, the Mishnah of Horayot as a whole was composed before this Mishnah, because this Mishnah is commenting on that. In Horayot, it says, there is a mitzvah aseh in the mikdash, for which the Sanhedrin is not liable. So the law, the Masechet Horayot, is all about if the Sanhedrin makes a mistaken ruling, then they made it by mistake. Then, if it's within a certain category of laws, the Sanhedrin themselves have to bring a pad lehatat. That is generally true if they make a ruling by mistake, that would require people, if they did it individually, if they did that sin, they would have to bring a chatat offering by violating it. But it's not their fault, it's not the people's fault, because they were following the Sanhedrin. So, because the Sanhedrin told them something for which they would have had to bring up korban chatat, and instead the Sanhedrin, now they have to bring their own par as a chatat offering to cover all the people that sinned because of them. However, that rule only applies for sins for which the people would have to bring a regular chatat, meaning in the chatat that's just an animal, not an olev yored, not sliding scale that if you pour you bring birds, and if you pour you bring a meal offering. If it's if the Sanhedrin says that you're permitted to do something for which, if the person did it themselves on their own, by their own mistake, they will bring korban olev yored, then the Sanhedrin does not bring a par chatat, and so therefore this fits into that category that if the Bet Din would come and say, oh yeah, if you're in the mikdash and you're tameh, well, you're there anyway. You could take the long way out. The Sanhedrin made a mistake. They said that ruling. If they made that ruling by mistake, of course they have to correct it. It's a mistaken ruling, but the Sanhedrin does not have to bring a par chatat for that. Now, while we're on the roll of explaining the examples that are brought in Masechet Horayot, we explain yet another one. What is an example of mitzvat aseh regarding an issue in the topic of nidah, for which if a Sanhedrin makes a mistake, they would be liable to bring a par chatat? The answer is, let's say someone was in the middle of having relations with a woman who is tehora. She's ritually pure. So totally fine. He's doing everything okay. But then in the middle, while they are in the middle of intercourse, she says, I became tameh. She started bleeding. She could tell. She feels it. Sisla, I started bleeding. Now I'm nidah. I am prohibited. You cannot be with me. But he is inside her. Peresh miyad chayav. If he removes himself immediately, then he is liable, because his removal gives pleasure to him the same as his entry, because it's equally pleasurable to him because he's aroused. So he is liable for exiting. What is he supposed to do? He's supposed to not move. Just wait there until he's not aroused anymore, and then once his arousal goes away, he can remove himself without getting any pleasure. That's what he's supposed to do. Now, if a Sanhedrin, someone asks a Sanhedrin, what's the law in this case? And mistakenly, they say, oh, he should remove himself immediately. Well, that's a mistake. And it is a mistake that if someone would do this, by mistake, if an individual would do this by mistake, they will bring a regular korban hatat. So therefore, if the Sanhedrin rules on it by mistake, then they have to bring a par hatat. And so that's an example that's different from the example above. Now, back to the regular scheduled programming of bringing a korban oleh v'yored. In the case where there was a lapse of knowledge regarding Tum'ah and the Mikdash, there's actually three different opinions here, in addition to the one that we saw above as Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Hasheres v'ne'alam mimenu, al ha'elem sheres chayav, ve'eno chayav al ha'elem Mikdash. In the beginning of the Mishnah in this Perek, we said that there's four different cases, and the four different cases, including a lack of awareness that I am Tameh, and I went to enter the Mikdash, or lack of awareness, I am tameh, and I ate sacrificial food, or lack of awareness, I didn't realize that this is a place of the mikdash, or I didn't realize that this this meat is hekdesh. So in all those cases, one brings a korban, oleh v'yored, according to Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer, however, disagrees, and he says, in the pasuk it says, if someone becomes tameh because of a sheretz, and he does not realize it, ne'elam mimenu. What do you see here? That one has to bring a korban, and then right after it says, then you bring korban oleh v'yored. It means that one brings a korban oleh v'yored because he became tameh by a sheretz, for example. However he became tameh, but the sheretz is one of the examples that the pasuk brings. So if you became tameh and you didn't realize you became tameh and entered the mikdash or ate sacrificial food, then you have to bring korban oleh v'yored. But the pasuk does not talk about when someone doesn't realize that they're in the mikdash at all. For that, no, there's no korban oleh v'yored, according to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Akiva seems to agree with the law, although he derives it slightly differently. Rabbi Akiva omer v'ne'alam mimenu v'hu tameh, al ha'elem tumah chayav ve'eno chayav al ha'elem mikdash. He quotes actually the very same pasuk, but a different part of it says v'ne'alam, he didn't realize, and he is tameh, meaning he didn't realize that he is tameh. One only brings korban oleh v'yored if he is tameh but doesn't realize and enters the mikdash or eat sacrificial food. But if he doesn't know that this is the mikdash area, or doesn't know that this food is sacrificial food, then he does not have to bring a korban oleh v'yored. So that's Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Finally, Rabbi Ishmael omer ne'alam sheteh pe'amim lechayeh b'halem tumah v'al helem mikdash. Rabbi Ishmael says, like we saw in the beginning of the Mishnah, according to Tanakama, it says the word v'ne'alam twice. That covers two different types of cases, whether one did not realize that they were tameh and they do either of the things, or he did not realize that this place is tameh, or that this food is tameh, that this place is kadosh, or the food is kadosh, and he goes there or he eats it. So Rabbi Ishmael says, we learn from the doubling of v'ne'alam that all the cases in the beginning of the Mishnah are included for one to have liability to bring a korban oleh v'yored. Amar papa l'Abaye shetaim shen arba. Back to the beginning of the Mishnah that said two that are four. Is it really two that are four? Shetaim shehen shesh havyan. Yediot hatumah techila v'asof. Yediot hakodesh techila v'asof. Yediot mikdash techila v'asof. It really should be six. Now, with the way we counted before, we said there's two, that's four. The four is four different scenarios, four cases. And the four cases are: person's is realized, then forgot, then realized that they were tameh and then entered Beit HaMikdash. Or they realized they're tameh, forgot, and then ate sacrificial food. Or, that's two of the cases. The third case is, they knew they were tameh the whole time, but they knew this was a Mikdash area, then they forgot, entered it, and then they realized. They realized that food was hekdesh, and then they forgot, and then they realized again. So the four are four cases. But a papa is taking yediot hatumah to mean awarenesses. How many specific awarenesses are there? And therefore, in each of those cases, there's awareness before, then he forgot, and then awareness after. So there's actually two different awarenesses for each case. That's his question. Why are you saying that there's only four? Actually, it should be six. We're going to ask about 8 in a second. First, he says, right, you realize you were tameh in the beginning, and then you did one of 2 items, entered the mikdash or ate sacrificial food, and then you realize you're tameh at the end. So that's 2 knowings that one is tameh. Or yedi'at hakodesh techila v'asof, you knew this was sacrificial food, then you forgot, then you knew, so that's 2. Or you knew this area was the temple courtyard, and then you forgot, and then you realized again. So there's 6 periods of awareness. Why'd you say only 4? Abaye asks him back, Ulitamich temanevyan, taika tum'ah v'dekodesh v'tum'ah demikdash techila v'asof. Abaye says, wait a second, I understand your question, but if you're going to ask your question, you should ask about 8 of them. Why doesn't it say 8? Because for Kodesh, there's Kodesh. For Tum'ah, I forgot that I was Tameh and I Kodesh. And there's also, I forgot that I was Tameh and I entered the Mikdash. So those are 2 different cases, and each one has an awareness in the beginning and the end. So isn't that 8? So we answer that question. Rapapa says, Halakashya, Shem Tumah Chati. It's one category of Tumah. Whether one is, one forgot one is Tameh, and you did this or that, he's not counting what you actually did while you were Tameh. 2 different things that you're not allowed to do while you're Tameh. But the point is that you knew you were Tameh, you forgot you were Tameh, did something wrong, knew you were Tameh again. So he's including that all within the same name of Tumah. You're Tameh. When someone is Tameh, they're not Tameh for entering the Mikdash or Tameh for the prohibition of eating sacrificial food. Tumah is Tumah. Okay, Mikol Makom Shitavyan. Nevertheless, we go back to the original formulation of the question. Fine, but still, there's 6 and not 4. Amar Rav Papa le'olam temane havyan arba'e kamaita de la maitan le lide korban lakachashib arba'a betaraita de maitina le lide korban kachashib. And so Rav Papa, who actually asked the question in the first place, answers his own question and says, you know what, really it is 8 periods. There are 8 periods of awareness. That's true. But the Mishnah is not counting all of them, but only half of them. Why? Because the first 4, meaning when one is aware before the sin, right? The initial awareness before the forgetfulness, that he doesn't count among the 4 because that does not lead one to bring a korban. I'm aware that I'm tameh. Okay, good. I'm aware that I'm tameh. I don't have to bring korban just because I'm aware that I'm tameh. I didn't do anything wrong yet. Okay, so I'm aware that I'm tameh. Then I forget and I do a sin. It's the second awareness that triggers the requirement to bring korban. So that's what it means. There's 4 awarenesses that will trigger a korban. That's what is counting. Whereas so it doesn't count the first 4 because they don't trigger one. Whereas the second time that one is aware in each of those cases, and there's 4 cases. Now we are counting all 4. The 4 cases where the awareness after the fact is what triggers a korban. So that's what is counting as 4. Another version of Papa's answer. In fact, there are 4 distinct periods of awareness. But again, we're not counting all of them for a slightly different reason. But the first 4, meaning the awareness before the sin, we are not counting, because in all the rest of the Torah, we don't count those things. Even if someone is aware that it was Shabbat, or not aware that it was Shabbat, and then at some point they forget, and then they do something. It really doesn't matter if they were aware or if they never knew. It could be someone never learned about Shabbat at all, never realized that whole time that it was Shabbat, never knew that this melacha was prohibited. For the laws of Shabbat or for any other laws where one could be liable to bring a korban hatat, there's no necessity for there to have been awareness at the beginning. And therefore, we're not counting those. But the 4 later ones, the itnehu, where that is the same in all of the Torah, that's what is counting. Because just like in all the Torah, if you didn't realize that this was prohibited on Shabbat, and then you know after, or if you eat chaleb. So let's say I never knew it was chaleb for my whole life before that, and I was there was never in a period of awareness. And then I eat it, thinking it's kosher, and then I realize afterwards I have to bring a korban hatat, because there's awareness after. So I'm only counting the awareness after, because that is what is true in the whole Torah, not awareness before that, because that's specifically special to this set of laws that you have to have awareness before in order to bring Korban Olev Yored. If you didn't have awareness before, then you don't have to bring a Korban Olev Yored. So it's functionally the same as this answer, but just formulated slightly differently. Papa is another question. What if a person forgot altogether the laws of Tum'ah? What do you mean he forgot all the laws of Tum'ah? If you think it means that he didn't know, he forgot or didn't know that a dead sheretz causes tumah, or if a dead frog causes tumah. Well, he doesn't know that. Go to elementary school. These are pisukim. Everybody knows that. No one can claim ignorance for something that is a simple reading of the Torah. So it can't be talking about that. Okay, in fact, it's talking about a case where a person knows that a dead sheretz, one of the 8 creepy crawlies, when it's dead, causes imparts tumah on anybody who touches it. And he touched a small piece, amount of a lentil, size of a lentil. That's what he forgot, a detail of the law. So that doesn't say the minimal size. So that's from the oral law. That already have to do some learning. It's easy to forget. And so he didn't know if the size of a lentil will make him tameh or not. So what do we call that? Let's say he knew all that, so he knew that a sheretz is tameh. He knew that he becomes tameh by touching a sheretz, and therefore he's not allowed to enter into the mikdash. He knew all that, but he knew he touched a small piece, and he wasn't sure if that small amount that he touched caused tumah or not. Do we say that since he knew the general rule, he knew that sheretz is tameh, and he knew that he touched it, so that's enough to be called yedi'ah? And then if he goes to mikdash and realizes after, he has to bring korban? Or dilma kevan dechadashad layada imetame ila metame ha'alamahi teko. Or since he does not know if he's actually tameh or not, because he doesn't know if this is enough of a size for him to make him tameh or not. So that's called that he doesn't know. I mean, he knows something about the concept, but he doesn't know in particular whether he is in fact tameh and prohibited from going to the mikdash or not. And therefore, that's not called yedi'ah batechila, and therefore he does not have to bring a korban olev yored. We leave this question standing.
בער בירמיה, בן בבל שעלה לארץ ישראל ונעלה ממנו מקום מקדש, מהו? Rabbi Yirmiyah asks a question about someone who lives in Bavel and he moved to Eretz Yisrael. And he does not know exactly where the Mikdash is. So he is Tameh, and he goes for a walk around Yerushalayim, but because he's not from the area, he does not realize that he's in the Mikdash. What about a person like that? Does he have to bring a Korban Olev Yored? So first, some background. Ali Bademan. Who are you asking the question according to? If you're asking according to Rabbi Akiba, it's true. Rabbi Akiba does require yedi'ah in the beginning and the end, and ha'alem in the middle, which is the standard halacha, as we know. Yes, that is true. However, we just learned in the Mishnah that he does not make one liable to Korban Olev Yored regarding someone Tameh who enters into the Mikdash forgetting that this is the Mikdash area. He only says you have to bring Korban Olev if you forgot you were Tameh. But if you know you're Tameh and you forgot this is the Mikdash, you don't bring Korban Olev Yored. So there's no question according to Rabbi Akiba. Now, so you'll say, I'm asking according to Rabbi Ishmael, who at the end of the Mishnah said that one is liable in both ways, if you forgot your tameh, or if you forgot that this is the area of the Mikdash. But Rabbi Ishmael does not require yedi'ah at the beginning. This was an issue that was brought up in a Braita on Daf Dalid. And Rabbi Ishmael does not, in fact, require Yedi'ah in the beginning, even if there was no Yedi'ah in the beginning. But then he did something, whether he forgot he was Tameh or didn't know that this was the Mikdash area, and then remembered, and then realized afterwards, he has to bring Korban Lev Yored. So it makes no difference whether he knew beforehand or not. So what are you asking? Oh, he was from Bavel, he kind of knew, he didn't know. It makes no difference. He would certainly have to bring Korban Lev Yored according to Rabbi Ishmael. Lasricha libad Rabbi. Rather, Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking his question according to the Yehuda Nasi, who does require Yedi'ah at the beginning, and he also makes one liable to coming into to forgetfulness regarding the area of the Mikdash. Okay, he also assumes that something that one learns in elementary school, that's called knowledge, even though it was a long time ago, and not everybody remembers everything they learned in elementary school, Rebbe. Nevertheless, that's called Yedi'ah. It was known to you. Basic knowledge is considered known. Since he knows that there's such a thing as a Bet HaMikdash, he may not know exactly where it is, but he knows there's such a thing, so that's called knowledge. Then he comes to Israel, comes to Yerushalayim, he's walking around, he has a general knowledge that there is an area that is holy, although he doesn't know exactly where it is, and then he walks there, so that's called, he had Yedi'ah, generally Yedi'ah is called Yedi'ah, and not lack of knowledge, and then he does realize afterwards, and so he has to bring Korban Lev Yored. Is that what we say? Or do we say, since he never knew where the Bet HaMikdash is? He did learn that there's such a thing as a place of the Bet HaMikdash in the courtyard, that's a holy spot, but he was never there, so he has no idea where it is. And therefore, you cannot call that Yedi'ah B'Techila. He never knew where it was. Rather, that's called that Ha'alama. From the very beginning, he had no idea. He doesn't know where he's walking now, and he never knew that the spot that he is walking in was ever holy, and therefore there's no Yedi'ah B'Techila, and so he would not have to bring a Korban Lev Yored, and we leave this question standing. Teko. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.